Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Baldurs Gate build video. Today we're presenting this very funny infinite sneak attack build. This clever mix of rogue and warlock allows for such potent invisibility that you're quite literally able to attack people without them being able to react or fight back. They can't see you or sense you or find you while you continually succeed the stealth checks, allowing for some brutal assassination options in, the open world. Outside of that silliness, in combat it means you're going to be rarely exposed. You can move around the battle, assassinating people while they often can't fight back or find you again. This keeps you relatively out of a combat turn order, leading to lots of freedom in a fight. The damage itself is going to be massive as you burst down foes, get the benefits of extra attack thanks to your Warlock Deep and Pact, and then there is our gear like our amazing legendary weapon, the Duelist Prerogative. This weapon, through its passive of Elegant Duelist, makes crits more likely. It provides an additional reaction per turn. That reaction can be used to increase the necrotic damage that you're actually dealing, leading to higher burst. It comes with its own unique weapon action, allowing for an additional melee attack per turn for a bonus action outside of our Deep and Pact extra attack, which is brilliant. So it hits hard as hell and many times too. Combining this with the elegant studded leather chest piece here, and we have this insane advantage on stealth checks. This is how we're constantly remaining in stealth, maintaining our invisibility, and being that nightmare assassin we aim to be as we attack people and they just can't see us. Even if it does go wrong and you do get exposed, thanks to our subclass, we always surprise foes, which then guarantees crits against surprised enemies. Our opener in any fight then, even when exposed, is super strong, and plus as a nice mix of rogue and warlock, we have the potent spells like Eldritch Blast for ranged options and knockbacks. We have Dark Vision to see through the clouds that we can make that obscure vision and generally cause chaos. It is indeed a very unique build and very fun playstyle. So let's explain how we form this build. So, how are we going to level this build? We're going to begin with Rogue, as you should expect, but the overall levels are going to be 5 in Rogue and 7 in Warlock total. We'll go through each level and explain why, but since we're also here, let's do the ability points. As you can see, we have 10 in Strength, 16 in Dexterity, 16 in Constitution, only 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 14 Charisma. We're obviously going to be pumping our Dexterity to 20 throughout the leveling. Our Constitution will help us stay alive, and we've got a little bit of Charisma in terms of the modifier to benefit from our Warlock on those spells and the Pact of the Blade. So let's confirm this and do the rest of the levels. For the next level, at level 2, we're just going to go with Rogue. We're going to get our Cunning actions, which is obviously going to be really nice. And at level 3, we're going to unlock the actual subclass for our Rogue, which is going to be Assassin. This is for the amazing passives, like the one that immediately lets us restore action and bonus actions at the start of combat, which is amazing. Ambush, this is what gives us a guaranteed critical hit, any surprise creature, which is major. And then the Initiative, giving us advantage on our attack rolls against creatures that haven't actually taken a turn yet. Basically the burst at the beginning of a fight. Next up, we'll hit level 4 on the Rogue, which brings us to our first feat, where, as you should expect, we're going ability improvement and getting 18 dexterity. On the next level then, it's time to begin our multi-class adventure, where we're going to start going into Warlock. Now our overall level is 5. For the cantrips, of course, we're going Eldritch Blast, which is amazing, and for the second, it's really up to you, but we like friends, giving us that extra advantage on any charisma check for non-hostile creatures. Just generally nice in the open world and so on. For the subclass, we're going Archfey. It gives us options with Charming and Frightening, and particular spells, which can be useful too. In regards to the spells we're going to choose, we'll have the Fairy Fire, giving us attack rolls and advantage against targets and revealing them as well, which is really nice, but also Armor of Agathes, giving us some temporary health and reflecting damage to those that attack us. It's just a very nice spell. We won't use it often, but it gives us a defensive spell option. Our next level will go to Warlock level 2, where we get our Eldritch Invocations. Of course, we're going Agonizing Blast to enhance the Eldritch Blast based on our charisma, as we mentioned, and very important, we're going to go Devil's Sight, so we can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical. We'll be using our own spell that generates a sort of darkness effect, and having Devil's Sight will help us with that. For spells, it's one we're going to sacrifice later, but it is nice to have Hellish Rebuke as a reaction to an attacker to burn them with fire. This brings us to our next level of Warlock level 3, where we can now get our Pact boon. Of course, we're going Pact of the Blade to get the Bind Pact weapon, basically enhancing our damage with charisma. For our first level 2 spell, we're taking darkness, creating a dark shroud that heavily obscures and blinds creatures within, and again we should be able to see through this with our passive. At our next level we get Warlock level 4, which does bring us to our next feat, which gives us again ability improvement to get to 20 dex. Very good. Also for our spell we're going to pick up Misty Step, so we're able to move through the battle and get to where we need to if we need to. Our next level brings us to Warlock level 5, where we get the very nice Deepen Pact, which allows us to attack multiple times a turn, which is going to be very potent. While we're here, we're also going to get our next Eldritch Invocation. This is really up to you, but as always, we like Repelling Blast because it gives us a way to use that ranged cantrip to knock enemies off ledges, off your teammates, reposition them, and if you don't want to use Repelling Blast, you can always toggle it off in the passive tab, so there's really no downside. For our next level 3 spell, we're going to take Counterspell, which is going to be great for dealing with spellcasters, and at this point, we're going to replace a spell. Like I mentioned, we're going to get rid of Hellish Rebuke, and this is going to allow us to pick up Hunger of Hadar. Creatures within a black sphere are going to be blinded, take damage at the end of the turn, at the start of the turn as well. This can be great if we're out of our invisibility and want to control the space by making it really difficult for enemies to be in. So we swap the spells. At total level 10, we're going to hit level 6 Warlock, which is going to give us the Misty Escape passive. This is why we're really in this subclass, right? Upon taking damage, you become invisible. On your next turn, you can cast Misty Step, though that will break your invisibility. This allows for some, panic repositioning, but also getting back into invisibility, which is really nice. At this point, we can pick up something like utility, such as flying, allowing us to reposition where we might need to. At total level 11, we're going to go into Warlock once more. At this point, we're going to pick up something just general, something that'll be nice for your general gameplay, Beguiling Influence. You gain proficiency in Deception and Persuasion, nice for your normal gameplay. At this point, we get level 4 spells, where we pick up the all-important to this ridiculous concept, the Greater Invisibility. Attacks against us have disadvantage, and we have advantage on our attacks. Very important. For our last level, we do something potentially controversial and swap off Warlock at level 8 to go to level 5 Rogue, which gives us the very strong passive of Uncanny Dodge. When an attack hits you, you only take half the usual damage. So this makes us way more survivable and will be quite impactful in the end games, in the late game boss fights and so on. The majority of our damage is tied to sneak attack as well, and at level 5 Rogue it pushes your sneak attack to 3d6, which matters more than the feat we might get at level 8 Warlock, which, since we're already at 20 dex, isn't going to be that impactful. But there you have it, we have our level 5 Assassin Rogue, and we have our level 7 Warlock under the Archfey. When it comes to the gear we're running then, let's talk about that. There's two main pieces that you're going to want to reach this build sort of silly status, but for each piece of gear you're running, it should serve a purpose towards the main concept of the build, right? And that's going to be improving your dex, improving your damage in any way, or your stealth benefits. So while you're just playing the game, leveling up in Act 1, 2, or 3, that's what you want to focus on and basically facilitate. A common great one is the Amulet of Branding, which allows us to brand the weak, choosing some type of damage to make them vulnerable to deal double damage. In this case, our weapon is going to be dealing piercing damage, so that's what we go for there. Ring of Arcane Synergy can be nice because we are using a cantrip in the form of Eldritch Blast occasionally, so we'll get Arcane Synergy for 2 turns, improving our weapon attacks for that period. I have these shoes here that give me extra AC and acrobatics, so those are some examples, but let's talk about the main 2 pieces. Obviously, the weapon is very important. This is the Duelist Rapier. It's quite a unique weapon. A 1d8, it also has necrotic damage on it, and in my case, thanks to the gloves I'm wearing, it adds some fire. As a legendary weapon though, it's obviously very good. When your offhand is empty, so that's what we want to do, we're just using this main weapon, you can roll a critical hit at 19 rather than 20 on the roll, which makes it more likely, but more important, you gain an additional reaction per turn. That can be very strong, but then it comes with Withering Cut, so on hit with the melee weapon, you can use a reaction to deal more necrotic damage equal to the proficiency bonus. So we can use that extra reaction we have to enhance our damage, which is well worth doing. It also comes with Challenge to Duel, making people focus on you, which is probably not what we'll be using too much in this, and Dueler's Enthusiasm, which is what allows us to make an extra melee attack when we're not dual wielding and just using this weapon. So extra damage because of the extra reaction, and extra damage through an extra attack. On the other hand, we have the very important chest piece, the Elegant Studded Leather. This comes with Ambusher, giving us a +2 bonus to initiative rolls, and more important, an advantage on stealth checks, which is how we're getting the ridiculous combos of being invisible and stealth, attacking and never being exposed so we can attack again and again and again. And this is really a big part of why that's happening and why the build gets silly. It also comes with shield, which is certainly a very good thing. And hey, it's a reaction which synergizes with the extra reaction we get from our weapon. How do you get these weapons then? We'll start with the rapier first. To get this weapon, you'll need to complete the Save Vanra quest in Act 3. This is a big quest, and naturally this is a build video rather than like a guide to that specific weapon, but here are the main notes on how to get it. In the lower city during Act 3, we will pick up the quest in the Baldurs Gate barracks from Laura, who's freaking out that their child's been stolen. We'll need to craft Hag's Bane, a throwable sort of grenade, using alchemy. There's a safe in Old Gallows Place to the southwest, which has this recipe and the ingredients for it in it. You can just go there and steal from the safe, or you can help Mayrina, who's upstairs, and be given access to the safe anyway. It turns out that the owner of the Blushing Mermaid bar to the west was Auntie Ethel in disguise. We never killed her in Act 1, even if you tried. By talking to the owner of the bar, you'll out Ethel through this conversation and end up having to fight some guards. After you defeat them, you can head into the basement to chase after her. Eventually catching up with her, we will then use the Hag's Bane grenade potion on Auntie Ethel, which will force her to free the child. Once you've done that, you're allowed to just kill the hag once and for all, but to do so, you will need to destroy the 3 mushrooms around the room, otherwise she just keeps reviving over and over. Be aware too, you can completely ignore the people under her control. They'll be freed when you defeat Ethel. After that's dealt with, we can find Laura in the lower city and get the rapier as a reward. On the other hand, we have the elegant studded leather chest piece. To get this chest piece, you can steal it or complete the quest Return Raketh's Gold, also found in Act 3. Again, here's a short version rather than a full guide. To get this quest, you will need to head to the counting house in the lower city, it's to the southwest, and make your way down to the vaults below, which you can do through conversation to get a pass, or one way or the other. Down here, you will encounter a puzzle you'll need to solve, but upon entry to the true vaults, you'll encounter an attack that's going on. If you help them overcome it, you can speak with Rakath, the main banker, and agree to help him recover the stolen gold. At this point, right, you can just steal the vault key from him directly, like pickpocket him, or simply lockpick it your way into the vault itself on the wall. In that vault is the chest piece we're after, so this can really speed up the process. Alternatively, you could actually help him by going into the sewers and recovering the lost gold, and when you bring the gold back to him, he returns you with the vault key so you can open it and get the chest that way. Whichever way you go, that's how we get the chest piece. Let's now cover how to play the build. Basically, we're going to massively abuse our free stealth damage thanks to being completely invisible while the enemies can do, well, next to nothing in return. If and when your stealth breaks, we can simply fall back on our general rogue abilities, tied with the packed Warlock melee and spells that we have. We could just cast the next Invisibility and just keep going, and if that's all spent and we're just totally out of spell slots, we can just fight normally, and simply short rest to get all our Warlock spell slots back for the next fight. But let's get a little bit more detailed than that. To begin with, always make sure your packed weapon buff is active, generally, so you get the most out of your charisma. Then, before combat, we'll get into our first invisibility by casting Greater Invis on ourselves. Thanks to the 20 dex and our various proficiencies, we should be at plus 13 stealth during this invisibility, but to be broken out of invisibility, we'd have to fail stealth checks to such a dareable degree on that we'd basically need to double roll natural ones, which is very unlikely, but possible. We should also mention the spells. There's one called Pass Without Trace, which you could access via your party, maybe through a Trickery Cleric or Druids or like a Gloomstalker Ranger. There's a few ways to get that spell if you want to use it. And that would net you an extra 10 stealth for those checks, making it even less likely to ever break. But that's a concentration buff, so we need someone in the party to do that for us since we're already concentrating. You don't need to do this, but it is an option. Anyway, let's say you're stealthed and you're now invisible. We'll simply walk up to our preferred target and, well, sneak attack them. We'll burst them for that hit, and then hilariously be very likely to pass the initial stealth check to remain in stealth to just keep attacking them. If you do this in a way that's not even initiated combat, you can just infinitely attack them while they freak out. This is all before any real combat even begins, so you can really work someone down beforehand. Eventually the stealth will break, even as hard as that is to achieve, thanks to the fact that our chest piece is carrying the advantage to stealth checks, working overtime in that scenario. But when you're attacking in a stealth state like this, there's a DC check to expose you that gets higher and higher and harder harder and harder to eventually cause you to, be knocked out of the invisibility and stealth. If you find yourself in combat though, before you do any of that, you can ultimately still stealth yourself and go invisible. Because of that, you'll be off the turn order and can take your turn out of sync of the combat. There's a good chance that you'll remain out of the turn order for an occasional turn here and there, so make use of that when you can. But if you are in the turn order, it's going to be very hard or very unlikely that anyone spots you or reveals you, so you're going to be very safe while invisible. The only real concern is being exposed, right? Some enemies have spells to reveal invisible enemies, and that could be an issue, but because we're running greater invisibility, we have the advantage to stealth checks. There's still a good chance that we avoid that. But let's say you've done your various ambushes, you're out of stealth, you're out of spell slots to go back into it perhaps, and you're fighting while now exposed. There is the other options like the clouds or the spell Hunger of Hadar to rely on. This generates a black sphere which will blind and also deal damage to those inside at the end and start of their turns. Thanks to our passive of Devil's Sight, we should be able to fight and see within this, leading to a large advantage while that's going on. And outside of all of that, ultimately you are still a Warlock mixed with Rogue, so you've got your strong bursty damage mixed with the cantrip of the Eldritch Blast for range burst and the awesome potential there, whether you're using repelling enemies to throw them off cliffs or reposition them, benefiting from using a cantrip like that for arcane synergy with that one ring we mentioned, or fighting with the legendary weapon itself, smashing targets with your extra attacks, and using your advantage to sneak attack mid-combat whenever possible. It's quite bursty, it's quite fun, you're like the ultimate assassin. But there you have it, our guide to this very silly invisible ambush rogue lock build. It is a very unique playstyle, and up to you how to make the most of your many invisible attack rounds. And ultimately freak people out and have a lot of fun in towns too. I mean, with this level of stealth, you can easily steal a lot of things, pickpocket, or get to places you otherwise would have a hard time doing so. We hope you've enjoyed the build though. If you have, do drop a like. But as always, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.